Hey guys, let's talk about rough idling and rough running on a Triton V10. This particular one is a 2-valve, but the procedure and the potential causes I'm about to describe apply to the 3-valve models as well, and this is going to apply to everything, from your pickups to your excursions to your motorhomes to your E-Series van. I don't know if they put V10s in E-Series vans. I think they did in the bigger ones, but it's going to apply to all them. Kind of a very similar procedure. It may look different because this is a 2-valve and a pickup, but again, you can apply that to your situation and just adjust as necessary for your application. So, problem at hand. You have a V10, maybe even a Triton V8, they're similar, and it's just not running right, and it comes on suddenly, You're getting stumbling, hesitating, lack of power. It acts like it wants to die when it's in drive, and you come to a stop somewhere, it just really lugs down. Maybe even you come to a stop, you're on the brake, you turn the wheels to make a turn, and the motor dies. Okay, but at the same time all this is happening, there are no lights coming on your dash, except when the engine shuts off, then it throws a fit. But there's no service engine light, there's no battery light, there's no low oil pressure light, there's no overheating. All your gauges and everything read normal. The only thing that's all over the place is maybe your tachometer. It's just, it's doing this because the motor can't maintain a consistent RPM. But let's say also at the same time, maybe not, you put that skinny pedal all the way to the floor and give this thing all the pony power it can produce, and it seems to smooth out and be okay. But you let off, and it goes back to running rough. And even at highway speed, you put a load on it, it doesn't have the power. It's like it can't, surging, it just doesn't want to go. That could be a lot of things. But the best way to address this problem, even though it's going to take some time, is to start with the simple stuff first and work your way up to the more advanced things. The very first thing you want to look at is your fuel quality. In my experience, more often than not, when these V10s start to run a little off or a lot off and it's sudden, it's almost always related to fuel quality. Now, you may go to the same filling station every time and get the same type of gas every time, and sometimes it just happens. Maybe the cistern in the underground part of the filling station gets a little condensation in it from temperature changes, and you put some of that fuel in there, and all of a sudden your injectors decide they don't like that. The solution, if you do have bad gas, the easiest way to tell if you have bad gas is to put some fuel additives in. If you haven't already, run the gas out of it, and then when it gets low enough in the tank, like half a tank, fill it up again, see if the performance improves any. See if the performance improves any after putting the additives in. I advise, this is just my opinion, that you put some fuel additives in. If you're running ethanol blended fuel in these older V10s, this is a 2001 here, so they were built before ethanol was really a thing. I hate ethanol, by the way, okay? I'm not trying to defend it, but it's just the way it is. It's there. It's cheaper than buying regular non-ethanol gas, and since these things are so thirsty, I imagine a lot of you are buying that cheaper stuff and putting in. I understand, but you're going to have to dump some additive in every once in a while to make sure stuff stays okay, because that ethanol stuff is hard on your fuel system. Newer fuel systems are made to handle it, and this has a newer fuel pump in it, and I replaced all the injectors. In theory, the ethanol won't bother it as much as it would if it was still running factory components, but I don't know. I put ethanol fuel in this a lot. I'm bad about additives. I forget to put them in. I need to. Usually it runs fine though, but bad gas, that's the first thing you need to check. And again, the only way you can fix a bad gas problem is to put fuel additive in and run the truck until you burn the fuel out of it, and then either fill up somewhere else or go to that same spot, get the same fuel, and put additives in and fill it up. And there's a whole bunch of flavors of additives you can get at all sorts of places, and that should clear up the issue if it's a fuel quality problem, and a lot of the time it is. So after you put additives in and are running your truck for a while, you're trying to put some miles on it to burn all that questionable quality fuel out of the system. Some other things you can check and think about, just little things: your battery and your battery connections, your alternator connections, Your serpentine belt, you want to make sure that that's not cracked, split, worn out. This one's in pretty good shape still. Don't worry about that piece of wood holding the communication wire into the alternator. It's perfectly fine. I did a video on it. It works. It's fine. It won't even light the engine on fire. Check all that stuff. Stupid little things, yes. Air filter. When was the last time you changed your air filter? A lot of people seem to forget about the air filter. And on this one, I'm not going to be able to put this back on one-handed. I got a technique to get it on correctly the first time, but stupid Ford and their stupid air filter systems, good grief. It's like they don't want you to change the damn thing. This air filter has been in here for just about 5,000 miles. Okay, it's dirty. Now, if you look on the inside, it's perfectly clean. I don't know exactly why it gets this dirty. That's going to be a future video when I figure that out. I think it has something to do with the crankcase ventilation system. But don't worry, the intake horn is clean. You got to check your air filter. That air filter has just about 5,000 miles on it. Now, granted, this is a farm. We do a lot of idling and, you know, stop and go and out in the field and then onto the highway, and it sees a lot of dirt. This thing eats a lot of dirt. That's part of the reason I change the fluids and filters at 5,000 miles, grease the front end, check the axles, all that stuff, because farm miles are hard on a vehicle. And to me, 5,000 miles splits the difference between a time interval for changing and a mileage interval for changing, or servicing, I mean, if that makes any sense to you. That's why I do it at 5,000. And if you haven't changed your air filter in a while, now, I will admit, if you're in the city or you don't drive in a place where there's a lot of visible dust, it's probably not something you think about, like, oh, I can change my air filter every 10 or 15,000 miles. Well, you very well may be able to, but what happens if you forget? I write all this stuff down. Some people don't. I understand why. Some people have problems remembering everything and remembering to write stuff down, and it's more paperwork, and they don't want to do that. I like it, but if you can't remember the last time you changed your air filter, you probably ought to take a look at it, change it, just because, you know, filters are cheap, engines are expensive. Fuel filter, same way. Now, the fuel filter sucks to change. Anybody that's done that knows this. It is a pain in the ass to get to. They give you this stupid, well, they don't give it to you. You have to buy it. You buy this cheap pot metal disconnect tool. It doesn't work worth a tinker's damn. It's just a pain in the ass. There is no way to not get fuel all over yourself. No one wants to crawl down there and change it unless they have to. So if you want to make sure your fuel filter is not restricted and that it's delivering the correct amount of fuel up to the fuel rail, you can buy a fuel pressure gauge. You can put it on this port right here. It's supposed to have a cap on it. I lost it. It's probably down in the valley somewhere, and I haven't gotten it yet. But you put a gauge on there. When the engine's cold and off, put your fuel pressure gauge on there, start it up, and see what your fuel pressure is. You should have 30 pounds or better at idle if your fuel pump is good and your filter is not restricted. If you have less, well, 25 to 30 pounds. If you got less than 25 pounds, you probably ought to change your filter, see if there's a difference, okay? And if that doesn't make any difference, you may have an issue with your fuel pump. Because the fuel pump, there's no there's no lift pump and then an injection pump. The fuel pump in your tank is what supplies all the pressure to your fuel rail for your injectors. So if your fuel pump is weak and or your filter is restricted, you're going to have poor fuel pressure here at your rails, especially when you give it throttle and it doesn't do anything. It falls flat on its face. You know, low fuel pressure will do that. Got that all buttoned up. One of these days, I'll do a video on servicing this, and I'll show you guys how I get that clamp back on there the first time without any problems. It took me forever to figure it out. Maybe most people don't have that issue, but for the longest time, I did. Freaking Ford, they cannot design an air filter that is easy to service. It's always a pain in the ass with them. But back to the point. You've changed your air filter. You've changed your fuel filter. You verified your fuel quality is good. Your fuel pressure is good. You're still having this problem. Your alternator's good. Your belt's good. Your battery's fine. It's still an issue that came on all of a sudden. There's still no check engine light. Everything else on the truck functions exactly like it should. And what I mean by that is you don't have a power steering pump that's low on fluid and it's got increased friction because it's about to seize. Or you have a compressor, an AC compressor that is about to seize and that's lugging the engine down more than it should, okay, you don't have any issues like that. Next step, start unplugging coils and injectors one at a time. I recommend you do this when the engine is cold. You should have the engine running when you do this. You do have to be careful. I would recommend starting on the passenger side, and then if the engine starts to get warm, a little bit, let it cool down and switch over to the driver's side if you don't find the issue on the passenger side. What you do is one at a time. Come through here. Yes, it sucks to reach back there and do this. While the engine's running, you unplug a coil. Does the engine run better or worse? If it runs worse, plug it back in. Does it run better? Yes. Okay, good. That's not a problem. It's working. Then you do the injector that's next to it. And you keep working your way down the line until when you unplug something, you don't notice a change. If you unplug one of these injectors or coils and the engine runs worse, that means it was working and you unplugged it. Now it's not working. Now the engine runs worse. Right? Simple. So verify all that's good. If you come to an injector that you unplug and the engine doesn't change, it still runs like crap, there's no difference, plugged in or unplugged, then now you've isolated that issue to either the injector connector or the injector itself. In my experience, now I'm not saying this never happens, but in my experience, injectors, coils, and plugs do not just go bad, okay? They don't just quit. Even these aftermarket coils that I have in here, they don't just quit. They've actually run just fine. This one here, I would never have replaced if I didn't eject a spark plug out of that hole. And we'll talk about that in just a second. If you unplug a coil and you notice the engine, no change, it still runs like crap, okay, now you've isolated that issue to either the coil, the connector that goes to the coil, or the spark plug. It is possible for a spark plug to be worn out and it won't fire correctly. It is possible for the plug to back off, especially on these 2 valves. They like to do that, and let compression by, and you get a bit of a misfire. But the reason I don't think that this is going to be an issue is because that would cause an actual misfire, and you get a check engine light. If your plug was broken or something like that, if it starts to back out, you won't get a check engine light, actually, because, yeah. If you found an area where you disconnect something, the engine doesn't work any worse, verify the injector's good, make sure the wiring going to the connector's fine, make sure the connector's fine, make sure it's actually plugged in all the way. If you got a coil that's a problem, make sure the coil's good. Make sure your plugs are tight. Okay, if you unplug all this stuff, everything checks out, you may want to start pulling coils and making sure your spark plugs are still tight and they're not letting compression by. That will happen. On the V10s, I have only had it happen once. We have 2 V10s here. This is a 2001 in this F250. We have a 2000 Excursion. Same engine, similar amount of miles, 220. Actually, I think they have exactly the same number of miles right now. Funnily enough, 222,700, something like that. I have only had one spark plug ever eject on this, and it was this one right here, number 7. I did a little video on it, and that was after this thing had been run ridiculously hard. And I didn't actually have a misfire until that plug ejected out. So if you're here and you're unplugging coils and you're doing stuff, it wouldn't hurt to just go through and make sure they're all still tight. It wouldn't hurt if you haven't ever put new plugs in it and it's still got factory plugs or old plugs. It wouldn't hurt to go ahead and do a tune-up. Change the spark plugs on them. I have a video on that. I did it on the Excursion. It's a long-winded video, but I'll link it down below if you want to go watch. So now you've gone through all this stuff. You verified your plugs are tight. You verified your fuel pressure is good. Your injectors are firing. Your coils are firing. All the wiring is good. What's the next step? Well, my friend, if you're still having issues after checking all that stuff, we're getting into the really fun things, which is why I saved them for later. Vacuum lines. Those red lines right there, this line right here that goes to the PCV valve. Maybe you should check that PCV valve first. I don't know. That can cause rough idling issues. I thought I could show you better if I crawled up there. The idle air control valve back there can also cause some issues. But usually if your idle air control valve is bad or something like that, you're either going to have no idle or all the idle. It'll run too hard at idle, or just, not at all, because that's the way the valve works. With the vacuum lines, they run an interesting number of functions on this truck. I have a video on that. I'll link it down below if you want to go watch. People seem to like that video, which is awesome. If you're having a fuel issue, your fuel pressure checks out. If your fuel pressure is erratic, another cause, and yeah, I forgot about this. I'm sorry. I'm trying to cover everything as I go through it and make it make sense, but, you know, I forget things, okay? If your fuel pressure is not right and your filter's good, your pump's not bad, which your pump is usually fine, it could be your fuel pressure regulator. Now, your fuel pressure regulator is right back there. That orange vacuum line that goes down to that thing right there, that's your fuel pressure regulator. It is vacuum powered. You're going to have to make sure that vacuum line is okay. You're going to have to make sure all the vacuum lines that go into your throttle body are okay. You need to make sure all your crankcase ventilation lines are okay. Maybe this is something you should check out before you go pulling plugs on coils and stuff. You know, I'm just saying. Probably would be easier. Maybe somebody should have mentioned that first to keep everybody on track. I don't know. But you want to check all your vacuum lines. Unregulated air going to this engine will make it throw a fit. It could cause it to run worse. It could cause it to run faster than it's supposed to at idle. You gotta check all that stuff. I have a video not just on a guide to the vacuum lines, but also replacing the vacuum lines. Now, assuming the rats don't eat them off, it actually does work. I'll put both those videos down below, again, just so you can go check them out if you want. Yes, they're long, but so is this one. Buckle up, buddy. This is Red Iron Farm. We don't do stuff in a timely manner. If you verify all your vacuum lines and everything are okay, your fuel pressure regulator is working like it should. And again, usually this rough idle, rough running issue comes on suddenly. There's no check engine light associated with it, and everything else appears to run fine. We got to keep that in mind here. We're starting to get into the realm of things where if they fail or they're not working right, you're going to get a service engine light, unless your PCM doesn't work, but that is extremely rare. Could be a problem where your throttle body gasket is bad. Your intake manifold gasket, one of them is bad, and it's sucking in unregulated air, which happens. Your PCV valve itself, down there at the end of that hose, that little silver thing right there, just in case I forgot to mention that. I don't remember what I said 30 seconds ago. It happens. You want to check that out, make sure it's okay. Your PCV valve, when you take it out and you shake it around, it should actually make noise. It's supposed to. It's a check valve. And if that is loose or the little hoses or whatever are bad, that's going to suck in unregulated air, cause idling problems, cause operating problems. Usually your fuel economy will drop. I also have a video. I have lots of videos. I have a video on fixing the positive crankcase ventilation line to eliminate that goofy little elbow that Ford decided was a good idea at the factory. It's basically fuel line going into heater hose and hose clamp to the throttle body. Works a lot better than you would think. So, if you've done all this stuff and you verified everything on the engine is fine, the ignition system is working, the fuel delivery system is working, the electrical system is functioning properly, you're not getting unregulated air sucked in either through here or any of those vacuum lines or the other crankcase lines, all that stuff is working fine, your idle air control valve is working like it should, all this other stuff, and you're still like, I do not understand why this thing is still running rough. Well, there are a couple more issues. Well, there's at least one more issue. There's a couple more issues that could be going on if it's not poor quality fuel. The first other potential issue it could be, I know this ties into my last point, but I'm going to mention it specifically anyway just to make sure we're all good. Some people forget your brake booster runs off of vacuum power. Your brake booster runs off vacuum power. So if this line that goes from the throttle body over to the brake booster is cracked or leaking, that's going to suck in unregulated air, cause a problem. It could be that this right here on your brake booster, this check valve, I believe it's a check valve, that could be malfunctioning, cause an issue. You could have an issue with the diaphragm in the brake booster that's causing a problem. It's extremely unlikely. This is a replacement brake booster. When I replaced this, I had issues with no brakes, like they would just go out all of a sudden. Sometimes I'd press on the pedal and the brakes wouldn't work, so I got that fixed pretty quick. But it didn't affect the performance of the engine. Just because it didn't doesn't mean it can't. It just means it didn't. This is a potential, though unlikely, problem. Master cylinder not related. So the only other thing that I could think of that could potentially be causing a rough running issue is something with your transmission. Low on transmission fluid, your torque converter's throwing a fit, it's putting too much resistance on the engine, and it just won't work that way, especially at highway speeds. If your transmission's low on fluid, because your automatic transmission is a giant hydraulic valve, essentially, if it's low on fluid or it's just worn out, if it gets that bad, it could cause issues because the engine's trying to send power to it and through it, and the transmission's not working right. That puts undue strain on the motor, which could cause rough running. But usually, if it's running rough, what that really means is it's running at a lower RPM because it's got too much resistance on it. Okay? But it's a potential, unlikely, but a potential. So, if all that stuff checks out, everything's fine, you know your fuel quality is good, you've changed all your filters, everything is working out fine, all your hoses are good, you don't have any unregulated air entering the engine, the only other thing it could be is something mechanical. Something very wrong mechanical has happened. You have a lifter that's stuck or broken. You have a valve that's bent, stuck, broken. Perhaps you have a camshaft with a lobe that's bad and it's not actuating a rocker arm. Maybe you've got a rocker or a roller follower that's bad. Serious mechanical issue will cause a rough idle, a rough run. It can be inconsistent. Is it likely? No. On the 2-valve, it's not likely because the 2 valves just use a sprocket tied right to a camshaft. There's no cam phasers to go bad or anything like that. The timing chains will stretch. The guides will wear out. That is the nature of an overhead valve design with timing chains. It's just the way it is. But you know, you could have a cracked piston, you could have a ring that's bad, there's serious mechanical things that could be wrong, but that's pretty much a last resort type of diagnosis. Now, there may be some other small issue that I cannot think of that may cause a rough running issue with no check engine light. And again, if there's no service engine light, there's no code being thrown by the PCM, it really does narrow it down to something simple that's not working right, but it's not working right enough to warrant the computer throwing a fit. Or if it's not working right at all, the computer's probably not monitoring it, and so it can't tell you that specific thing is wrong. But if you have an outright failure like that on another component, that'll affect other things to operate incorrectly, and the computer should pick up on that. And hopefully all that makes sense to you. Oh, and your vapor can. Shouldn't cause any issues with rough running, but it will cause your fuel economy to tank. And these things don't need any help. I'm sure you all are aware of that. But your vapor can, it can go bad. Pun not intended. You've got vapor line here that goes down to there, and then underneath on the frame rail by where the fuel filter is at, something to keep in mind. I have a video about replacing this as well. I'm making a lot of work for myself. I got to link all these videos down below. Most of these are older. They're not as coherent as what you've been watching today. And yes, this is an improvement on what I used to do, so chew on that if you want. But that is about as comprehensive a diagnosis and problem list as I can figure for why you have a rough running, rough idle V10 with no check engine light and no obvious problem elsewhere. You can go through all the things and make sure all the things are fine and still have a problem, and at that point I'm going to tell you it's either severe mechanical failure or bad gas. Most of the time I'm telling you it's just bad gas. And the only way you can mitigate that is additives. I recommend, if you can afford it, to buy the non-ethanol fuel. It helps. I go ahead and buy the ethanol fuel because I don't notice any difference between that and other stuff, and because, like I said, I've replaced the injectors and the fuel pump. They're probably made and designed to run more with ethanol blended fuels. So even if the mechanical part of the engine isn't, the things that are, the plugs, the injectors, the pump, all that stuff has been changed. That's my theory on it. But if you can, yeah, buy the premium. It will help. In the Excursion especially, I notice it because it's still running a factory fuel pump. And I replaced the injectors on it, actually. I have a video on that. I'll link it down below. I gotta quit mentioning all these videos I've done. So, anyway, you can check out the description for all that other stuff if you want to watch it. They're really long. They're kind of boring. That's up to you. But if you're having problems with these V10s, the service manuals are not going to help you, because what they tell you is, this is funny. I have a Haynes manual for this truck. And when I was having this problem, I figured it was bad fuel, but I thought, well, I'll just go through the checklist and check stuff out anyway to make sure. And I go through the checklist, you know, kind of the troubleshooting that they have there in the Haynes manual, and what they say is basically your fuel pump's bad, your filter's clogged, or your engine's thrown a rod or something. They go from, well, it could be a couple of simple issues to, oh, your engine's done, you got to rebuild it. It's just, you know, there's no middle ground, there's no nuance in diagnosis in that service manual, and I imagine a lot of others are the same way. They're really bad about that. It's, well, you know, it could be you got a cracked hose, or, you know, your piston's in pieces in the bottom of your oil pan. Yeah, you never know. Like, I'm pretty sure I would have noticed if my piston was bad, but, you know, heaven forgive me if I didn't notice that. They're usually not quiet when they go. Something like that is, if any of what I just said makes sense to you, then you belong on this channel. Anyway, that should be everything that I can do to help you out on this, because that is the kind of thing that I go through. I've checked all this stuff. Those are the thoughts that I have, and, you know, I just analyze everything. If the obvious stuff isn't fixing your problem or changing anything, well, then you have to go to the less than obvious stuff. That's why I mentioned stuff like the fuel pressure regulator, the idle air control valve, all of the 8 million vacuum lines that connect to that throttle body, intake manifold gaskets. Maybe. Is it unlikely? Yes. It's also a possibility. Brake booster? Unlikely? Oh yes, it's very unlikely, but it's a possibility, and we have to look at all these things. I imagine if you're watching this video, you've already done a lot of this stuff, and you're kind of pulling your hair out, like, I don't understand why it's not running right. I'm telling you, though, it's got to be bad fuel. I can't stress that enough. Burn the fuel out of it. Go get new, fresh fuel with some fuel additives. Seafoam, stable, heat. There's others. Make sure it's for gas engines. Dump a bunch of that stuff. Well, I mean, dump it in according to the manufacturer's instructions, and see if that clears it up. Seafoam works pretty good if you can get it. So, with all that being said, that is it for this. I am going to get on. I've got a harvest video I need to get back to editing. That's going to take forever. It'll be out eventually. I hope that this video helped you diagnose and resolve the problem on your Triton V10. And if it didn't, well, I'm sorry. I really am. If you have an issue with this and you get it resolved and it's not something that I mentioned here, then please leave a comment and let other people know, hey, I found this really weird, obscure problem that caused this problem, and it wasn't any of the things that this guy mentioned in the video. Yeah, leave a comment if that happens to you, because then everybody else will know, okay, I got to look at this too. I'm not omnipotent. I don't know everything. I can't know everything. Too much to know. So, anyway, I will get off of here. Again, thank you for watching. Check out the description for all those other really cool videos I made. Really cool. And we will see you in the next one. Don't forget to check your oil. It's fine. Don't need to worry about it. You don't need to worry about cleaning off your dipstick before you pull it. And that's what it should sound like. Nice and smooth.